Thank you very much for that introduction. I had no idea that you'd read my book yet, but that's exciting. Before I begin, I want to let you know that this is my absolute first appearance to do with the book, so I'm really happy that we can share it. I'm really happy that we can share this together, and I also want to take that as an excuse to let you know I didn't know that I should have memorized this, so this is typed. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, let me tell you how glad I am to be here. I'm not going to try to be professional or cool because I'm 22 and there's really no need for that, so let's be honest. When I found out I was coming here, I screamed and jumped up and down for 40 minutes. Also, I would like to take this opportunity to point out that I am probably one of the only people in this room to actually grow up using Accelerated Reader, and I'd like you to know it's pretty fantastic. Please consider this my formal request to have a quiz made for my book as soon as possible. But what makes this even more fun for me is knowing that in a room full of strangers, we all have so much in common. We're all readers to the highest degree. Bookworms, eggheads, whatever terms you throw at us, we can only shrug it off and say, hey, at least I'm not the only one. I take great comfort in that. I feel as though I am among old friends. In fact, we probably have quite a few mutual friends. Aren't we all rather close to Pip and Huck and Ramona? We may have nothing else in common, but the moment I say those names, we all suddenly feel at ease. We conjure up similar images, we smile a little to ourselves. Books can be such insular experiences. Often we read them alone, right before bed, with a tiny light on while the rest of the house is asleep. And yet they connect us. They forge bonds among strangers. This may seem obvious, and of course it is to a room full of librarians, but the more you explore it, the more it proves true. If you have read the same book as someone, you both have, however briefly, lived in the same world, breathed the same air, watched the same sunsets. My book, The Reading Promise, is about this sort of a bond. When my father and I began what we called The Streak, we were already somewhat familiar with this concept. He had been reading to me quite regularly. But then we made it our goal, when I was 9, to read every night, without missing a night, for 100 days. Because we read so often, I was confident we could do it. All we had to do was push through the occasional sick day, read even when day trips ran late, make time after school concerts. It was a fun little challenge for us. What we never realized, however, is how hard it would be to stop. 3,218 nights later, we finally did stop. We had read for almost 9 years, never missing a night, always coming back to each other with book in hand. Reading and the streak became as fundamental to us as eating when you're hungry or sleeping when you're tired. It was a routine, but more than that, it was an absolute necessity. It gave warmth and meaning to frosty January nights and provided cool stability on the warm summer evenings of my high school years. Every day, no matter how much we grew, my father and I spent a few moments in the halls of Hogwarts or Macbeth's castle. For 15 or 20 minutes a night, it was as though we were the same person. A 16-year-old girl and a 56-year-old man with the same hopes and desires, fears and despairs. When our favorite character died and we spent the next few days moping around the house, there was no need to explain our gloom. Instead, we made each other cups of tea and sat at the dining room table together, musing over other, less tragic endings. The old curiosity shop is, I think, single-handedly responsible for a year-long tissue shortage on Hazel Boulevard. Even now, we both wince when we see it in stores. In this day and age, this sort of bond is so vital. Twitter and Facebook, although good for some purposes, tend to give us a stream of meaningless facts about the people we love. We know when our friends and family spill coffee on their favorite dress shirts, or hear the first Christmas song on the radio, or narrowly avoid a speed trap. But these facts are hollow, if not a little absurd, without some emotion. Reading together is raw, emotional, and perhaps even brave. Whether you cuddle up with your grandchild or your grandparents, you're exposing yourself to very true, very real emotions. You may find yourself sobbing uncontrollably, or letting out the sort of contented sigh that we generally say until we are alone. The fact that you're sharing these emotions over the lives of fictional characters does not, to me, make the bond any less valid. Emoting sincerely and honestly together, no matter what the cause, seems infinitely more valuable to me than bombarding each other with status updates and whatever information you can fit into 140 characters. Even fiction is more sincere. If I seem a little dubious of the role that computers play in our everyday lives, I want to be clear that I think they have many wonderful purposes and that mine gets its sphere of use. But there are some things that computers simply cannot replace. My editor tells me that some of you have already read galley copies, and now you've heard, but for those of you who weren't aware, I will tell you that my father, a former children's librarian who devoted nearly 40 years of his life to forging a bond between children and literature, ultimately lost his job because of computers. His passion for reading aloud was painfully, frighteningly beaten out of him as the school district decided that computers, not books, should be the focus of a library class. His reading time with each class, once the highlight of a child's day, was limited to 5 minutes per period and then cut altogether. In the last weeks before his forced retirement, my father huddled his children in a corner of the library, turned off all the lights, and read to them in a whisper, hoping that passersby might assume the room was empty. He was caught and reprimanded. This all took place, I might add, in a school with a 90% poverty rate that has not passed a state test in years. Many of my father's students admitted that no one had ever read to them, period, outside of his class. And yet the idea of using school time to promote a love of literature was so shameful and so wasteful, it had to be done in the dark, in hiding, until he was caught. It is wonderful to be in a room full of people who are fighting this darkness, as I know you are. Librarians are entrusted with this light, the torchbearers in a rather dark and bleak time for the literary world. I've searched high and low for a statistic on how many Spark Notes are read each year. If you happen to know, please see me after this. I would love to know how many American children are missing out on copies of Jane Eyre, The Great Gatsby, and Dracula. How many pages are being boiled down to one-page summaries every day? I'm afraid that bibliophiles are becoming an endangered species. But I don't mean to be grim. I hope in my own small way to be part of the solution, to bring us back to books, whether they're tattered old editions or ebooks on our Kindles. The paper's not what matters, but the substance, undiluted and unabridged, is completely necessary to the advancement of our society. The books we read shape our society. So what happens to a society that doesn't read? People often ask me, if you and your father called your reading The Streak, why is the book called The Reading Promise? Well, there are two answers to that. One is that my publisher thought the word streak sounded a little PG-13. And the other, more important reason for the title of my book is a bit more difficult to describe. The Reading Promise is what my father made to me. It's what he made to his students, and I made to him, and we made to ourselves. It's why I stand here today. I worked for quite some time on one particular page in my book. It's the last one, wherein I asked the reader to make a commitment to literature. This page was the most important to me. I absolutely had to get it right, and I hope I did. I'd like to share it with you now. There are a few fill-in-the-blank moments, and for those, I use myself as the example as I read it to you. But I'd like you to picture your own information filling these blanks. Follow along in your mind and visualize the people who might motivate you to make such a promise as this. Children, neighbors, students, friends, keep these faces in your mind. We make this promise for them. The Reading Promise. I, Alice Ozma, promise to read. I promise to read on my own, in print or on a screen, wherever books appear. I promise to visit fictional worlds and gain new perspectives, to keep an open mind about books, even when the cover is unappealing and the author is unfamiliar. I promise to laugh out loud, especially in public, when the chapter amuses me, and to sob uncontrollably on my bed for hours at a time when my favorite character dies. I promise to look up words I don't know, and cities I can't locate, and people I can't remember. I promise to lose track of time. I promise to read with the people I love, if not every night, then whenever I can. I promise to remember that this person is more than my son, daughter, father, mother, sister, brother, aunt, uncle, cousin, landlord, or dog walker. He or she has a mind that, like mine, loves to be used and challenged. I promise to share books however it suits us best, whether we choose to read together or simply get together for discussions and homemade baked goods. I promise to appreciate the time we spend together and the literature we need, even when I am stressed or tired or sunburned or an awful combination of the three, because books are better when they're shared. I promise to do my best to meet our goal, whether that goal is to read for 10,000 nights or simply to get to know each other better. I promise never to give up on reading, nor let us give up on each other, whether we meet our goal or not. I promise to support reading in my community of Millville, New Jersey, however I can, and everywhere else for that matter. I promise to spread the word about words, whether it's volunteering at my local library or just recommending good books to friends. I I promise to speak out if reading is cut from the school curriculum and to fight for books whenever their value is challenged. I promise to tell everyone I know how reading calms me down, riles me up, makes me think, or helps me get to sleep at night. I promise to read and read to someone as long as human thought is still valued and there are still words to be shared. I promise to be there for books because I know they will always be there for me. I know it's a lot to ask marching into a room full of strangers and suggesting that you take some sort of a pledge. But I think we've already made this promise, whether we call it the reading promise or simply loving books. My editor warned me about preaching to the choir, so if you happen to run into her, let's not say I was preaching. Let's say I was helping you practice your battle cry. Let's say I was bolstering up some of the finest people in the world as they prepare to defend day in and day out, as they have for years, a cause which could not be more important or more relevant at this point in time. We entrust our future to you because you entrust our future to reading. I admire and respect you, but most of all, I thank you.